Greetings from Chicagoland. You're listening to Munira's Musings, where your host Munira will showcase new guests each week to share exciting details about the journey to their niches. As we like to say, the riches are in the niches, and on this show, we'll share ideas on how to break through our invisible boundaries so we can start taking steps towards our dreams and create the life that we most desire. If you're passionate about impacting lives, then this podcast will give you some great ideas and equip you with the tools to quickly grow your business. Okay, let's get started with today's show. Here's your host, Munira.
Greetings from Chicagoland. This is Munira, the host of Munira's Musings and the Niche Navigator, coming to you live with another guest, another segment of a person who has found their niche. I have Hina Fatima, all the way from California, but she's also a person who has moved to California from Pakistan. Welcome to Munira's Musings, Hina.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about trauma. What's trauma? Have you experienced it? How have you overcome it? Hina here is a coach that helps people do just that. So if you like what we are sharing with you, go ahead and share this segment with your friends and family. Let them know that this is a subject that everybody needs to tune into. And without further ado, let's talk to Fatima. Fatima. Hina, how are you? Thank you so much.
I am doing well. I'm doing well, and thank you for having me.
Great. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm actually a doctor from Pakistan, and I moved here after I graduated. I got married. It's been almost 15 years now. I have 2 children, and I moved directly to California. And when I came in here, it took me a while to settle down with my husband, because as it is, you have a hard time adjusting in an arranged marriage. It was an arranged marriage. I hardly knew my husband. And then, of course, moving out of country, out of your own environment. So no friends, no family. I was completely alone here. So it took me a while to settle here. I went into a little of depression, into a little of anxiety. Me and my husband, we were not getting along. And so with that, I was unable to give my USMLE exams. I actually did give my step 1 when I was expecting my first daughter, but then I was not able to pursue because I decided, that my family needed more time, and I needed to give more time and attention to my relationship because it was crumbling under the stress and depression. So anyways, a long story short, I've been married.
Hang on a second. You have a very interesting story. I'm going to stop you there. So let's go back a little bit. You are a medical doctor from Pakistan.
Yes.
And you were trying to get your certifications and exams done here so you could pursue that career.
Yes.
And because of marriage and family pressure, you decided not to pursue it?
Yes. So no, basically my husband was very supportive. It was not that he did not want me to, but I personally was unable to manage house and my studies. And that's where the trauma comes in, because, I had postpartum depression both the times with both of my daughters when they were born. And so after the second time, when I went to the doctor, that's where I was diagnosed with PTSD. And, that's when it all made sense, that whatever was happening, whatever my anxiety and depression and all those emotions were coming from.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
So that's where they were coming from, and now it made sense. It made sense to me. It made sense to my husband. And so we just, I just decided to pay attention to my mental health, and of course our marriage. And we were like, okay, career, we can look into it later on. There's no hurry. I can always try it later on, or I could choose something else. Like, for example, I tell people, if you're passionate about what you want to do, and if you continue doing something or the other in that path, right now I'm a coach. I'm a life coach working with trauma, PTSD patients. And so indirectly, it's taking me back to who I originally wanted to be.
You know, this is amazing. So let me, because I come from the same mentality as you, and for those of you listening, Indian mentality is always the house is first. And the in-laws, the outlaws, they make it a pressurized thing that they want women to leave their career for a second and take care of the family. The husband should be first, the children should be first. I've gone through the same things again. So I just want the awareness to be there for everybody listening. Was this a self-inflicted awareness on your part, or was it something that came from the in-laws and I call them the outlaws?
Yeah, no, it didn't come from my in-laws. No, it didn't, because my husband wanted me to pursue. He wanted me to become a doctor. My father, I was the first doctor in my family. Although we are a family of professionals, we have, engineers, chartered accountants, we have every field but a doctor in my family. So of course, when I became a doctor, everybody, my uncles, aunts back in Pakistan, they wanted me to pursue this and become a doctor, a practicing doctor. But it was my own personal decision, because I know my shortcomings and I know what I can manage, and that's what I teach people as well. That you need to start owning your stories, and you need to start owning your strengths and weaknesses. And once you make a decision, own it. Okay. So for me, when I took that decision, I do not regret it, because what happened and the result is today I'm very, very happily married, with 2 daughters, living a very, very good life, right? And then now pursuing my career as well in some way. And I may even give my step ones. I'm thinking of, I've started, actually, I've opened my books again after 16 years, hoping that I might attempt giving my licensing exams. So yeah.
Is amazing, right? This is, oh my God, this is so amazing. So you have 16-year-old daughters. I'm guessing your daughters are 14, maybe?
My 13. She's 13. She will turn 13. Yeah.
Okay, so you came to America, you've made a great stride. You thought, put family first, and people do that, right? People have always gone back to corporate lives after having children, raised their children, and made a wonderful career out of all this. So you are doing the same thing. How are you different from every woman that you meet?
Okay, so a lot of girls or even men, who have given importance to their marriages or to their husbands or to their partners, or have left their careers, they regret it. They're unhappy. And maybe I was too in the start, but it was because once I kind of owned it, that it's something that I cannot do, because I was struggling and I was overwhelmed. And so I was like, I made a choice. And so when I talk to these women and even men, because I have clients who, because of sometimes family pressures, especially people who are migrating, not just from Pakistan, but from that part of Asia, from Far East, from Vietnam, from, Philippines, they're very family oriented too. So I have even had boys who were like, because they had older parents or they had siblings that they had to take care of. And so, they sometimes regret, that the time when I could have flourished, I did not, because I had this family to look after. Or I had these, migrant parents who couldn't speak very well English, and they weren't making a lot of money, and I had to support them. I had to work, and I couldn't continue my studies, right? And so now they're in their 30s and their 40s, and they're like, I wish I hadn't done that. And so that's where I remind people what is important to them, because our priorities change, and they change every day. And so we always make a choice, and we make the best choice which is available to us at that moment. So if today I decide to choose something, and maybe after 10 years, when I look into retrospect, and I may say I could have done it differently, I could have made a different choice, maybe a better choice, maybe done something differently, maybe not made that choice at all. That is something that we're looking at after 10, 15 years, after seeing what the result was of making that choice, right? But in that moment when I made that choice, I made that choice because I felt that that was important, and that was the best choice I could make. A lot of time when people come to me, and they say, we have no choice, especially with women, we have no choice, we have to live in this environment with our husbands or with our in-laws. Well, I tell them, even when you're telling yourself that you don't have no choice, you're giving yourself a choice. You're limiting that choice by telling yourself that I don't have a choice, because you have a choice.
I'll tell you, when I was in college, I did all my story is different because I got married at 15, and then I raised my kids. I came to America, and then I went to college. When they were going to high school and college, I was doing it with them. And we had one professor who always said, there's always a choice. There's always a choice, right? So for women listening out there, you have a choice. Either you do it or you don't, and either you wake up on time or you don't. So every decision that you make is a choice that you have to fight with, and I never understood it until like 4 years later, and I realized what he was saying was so true. I still remember him because he instilled the best lesson ever. So ladies, you always have a choice.
And plus every day is a new day, so say yesterday I messed up, I did not do what I needed to do. It's okay. Today is a new day. You can still do what you didn't do yesterday. You can be flexible, you can alter it, right? With women who say our in-laws don't allow us, my husband doesn't allow us, he may not allow you maybe a certain time period, but after time he will. He may not allow you if you talk to him in a certain way, but maybe if you be flexible, you do something for him extra, or you tell him, okay, why is it that he's not allowing it? You also need to see why is it. It's not that he's trying to control you. And that's also another thing, for me, I used to think when my husband, he was protective of me, that he is trying to control me. And that's what a lot of women think. Maybe they do. There are men who do. I'm not saying they don't. But sometimes, just look into what is it that they're saying. Because I had come from Pakistan, and because, I was not flourishing, emotionally. So he wanted me to be safe, right? And so whenever he was allowing me or not allowing me to do things, it was not that he was trying to control me. He was just, it was a safety thing for him. And that is what it is for a lot of men, right?
So
and
was your husband...
Once I understood that, and then I was able to assure him that I'm not going to cross that limit, whatever he's putting on me, because he's afraid, it's an arranged marriage. He doesn't know me, so he's scared. And once I was able to assure that, and once I was able to build that relationship, when I was able to support him in his fears, he had no problem.
So
he understood me. He became my partner.
Right. Let me ask you this. There's going to be a lot of questions now that other women are watching this show. And so what kind of threshold were you going to cross? What was in his mind, right? There was different things that was going to come back. But let me ask you this. The first question in mind was, when you married him, was he already established here in United States?
Yes.
So he was. And then he comes back with a woman who has not been to United States. And all of a sudden, and we know this because we come from the same background, is that women who come here or people who come to United States, they think freedom, right? But what kind of thresholds are you going to cross over and create, right? And we all face those fears. We all do. You are a mother of, you said 2 daughters. I have 3 daughters of my own. And every day you live in fear of, are your children doing the right thing? Have they this? But I don't think it's just a question for people who are coming from another country. It's also for parents that are here who are, I mean, we are so exposed to so many different things every day. I live in healthcare, I work in healthcare. So you know that, there's a lot of elements that add, and there's also friends and family and pressures, and your teenagers can do things in a split of a second that can be a regret, right? So I don't want to go into all of these individually, but what I'm saying to all the listeners is that it's not just typical of people coming from the Asian continent. It's
A
also
certain culture, maybe.
for people all over the world who are coming to United States, and then we all live in fear. And I'm not sure. I mean, your husband would be here and he would be able to tell me what threshold he was fearing of. But that's not what we are talking about. We're talking about how you found your niche. So the other thing is, so you come here, you're trying to fit in, you're trying to understand and get acclimated to this culture of freedom and being in America. All of a sudden, you are not going to be a doctor anymore for a moment. And then you have your family, you're going through PTSD. How do you overcome this? And how did you become a coach?
Yes. Okay. So I'll briefly go over that threshold part. Okay. So a lot of thing was in my mind. He had never verbally expressed it. Sometimes men don't. My husband was not very expressive, especially those days, because we weren't connecting very well. We were not communicating very well. So these were a lot of things that I was assuming. But this I can say for sure. I was actually, because I was a 21st century girl. I was the millennial. I was the girl raised on Facebook, on internet. So I personally think I was a little fast for him. Okay, I was a little active. I was very young. I was 25, a little over 25. So I'm freshly graduate. So of course, very active, very passionate, very talkative, just like I am right now, And so I feel that's what happened. And, because of that, because he was a little laid back, and that's his personality. He was a slower person. He was a settled person. He was a quieter person. And so I believe that's what scared him. And then, of course, then there was the element of, his mother being there, who used to say stuff like, okay, going out, I might, become too independent and stuff like that. And I used to actually argue, what do you mean by independent? I'm already an independent girl, like stuff that you're trying to stop me from doing. I've already done those in Pakistan. I've lived a very happy and a very independent life. In Pakistan, I became a doctor. I was working 30 hours, anyways. So, well, when all of that was happening, since I was not a girl who could just sit at home and do nothing, my husband used to work. And when I had my first daughter, after that, I started volunteering here and there. I never sat at home. Okay. And even if I was volunteering, even if I had to sit at home with little ones, I had found I had found a job as a ghostwriter for a website. So I started writing articles for them, health-related articles for them. Then there was Kiwanis. It's an organization. It's for children. So they gave me their newsletter, their website. So these were the stuff I was doing sitting at home. Okay. And yes, there were things people were telling me, oh, why are you wasting your time? You could, why don't you just study in this time? And I was like, the focus, the attention that I needed to study the time that I needed to study, I didn't have that. Volunteering is something I'm doing 1, 2, 3 hours whenever I have the time, morning, afternoon, evening, right? And it's something that I'm doing just to keep myself busy, intellectually engaged and alive, because I couldn't just not do anything. And so that's where my social life was. And then when I had second daughter, then I joined Mom's Club here in Fresno, started, attending, my girls grew up, started attending a few, community center events, here and there. And so I kind of built upon on that. And then finally came 2018 when I was not even looking for a job. I was actually thinking of, and my husband never allowed me to go into any other field other than medicine as a professional. I tried looking into ultrasound or something other, and he would always say, no, you're a doctor. I married a doctor. So if you want to do something, make a career, give your steps and become a doctor. Otherwise, I have no problem. You're going to just be home. He didn't want me to become an ultrasound or do anything else. Anyways, so, but 2018 was a time I was like, okay, I'm not listening to him anymore, because now we had that relationship where, he trusted me. Now he knew what kind of a person I was. And he didn't have that fear, and I was doing things on my own. I was independent. And so I started studying for a cardiac technician, something, echocardiogram. And I was like, okay, whether he likes it or not, I want to do something. And I always wanted to become a cardiologist as a doctor. So I'm like, okay, if I can't be a cardiologist, at least I can do this. And I started studying for that. I didn't have to study a lot. I just had to do some English, math, and a few courses, because in Pakistan, we don't have the 4-year college. So they wanted 4-year college in Pakistan. After high school, I directly went into med school. And that's when a job of clinical research came to my door knocking itself, right? And then I worked in that for almost 2-3 years. Then came the COVID hit. And as COVID hit, I was unable to go in. My kids were home, my husband was home, and then my parents were visiting from Pakistan. And so, just that thing that I didn't want them getting sick. They were stuck here now. They couldn't go back because the flights were canceled and all. So that's where I kind of, initially I started working from home, and then I finally quit. And that's where I got introduced to NLP. And I had no idea about coaching. I had no idea this industry existed. And when I did NLP, and that's where I got into, I did it basically for myself, because as I had said, after I had postpartum depression, after my second daughter was born, that's when I went to the doctor, and I just told her stuff, and I told her, and she, of course, the doctors here, the psychiatrists, the therapists, they're experts. So they were able to track back into my past and then tell me where all those emotions, negative emotions were coming from, where all those fears were coming from, right? Where all those behaviors were coming from. And so now that I knew, and when I did NLP, and it helped me with a lot of that, with understanding a lot of that, and I got introduced to this business, I was like, I can do this. I was, I started listening to other coaches here and there, YouTube, and I'm like, okay, these people are doing well or whatever, but I, with my background, with my skills, with my education, with my knowledge, I can do this too. And maybe I can do this better than a lot of other people, in my mind, I'm like, I think I'm qualified. I believe I'm qualified enough to do this. And that's where this journey started. And so, of course, in the start, it was more of a mental health thing, but then mental health is a huge, broad spectrum. It's like, it has stuff like psychosis and schizophrenia and bipolar and different other personality disorders, and so I and then of course autism. A lot of people were coming in for their children, or for ADHD or ADD, and then I had to I was like, okay, because I'm not diagnosing and treating those, right? And so when I'm talking about being a mental health coach, they're automatically assuming that I'm a therapist, right, or a clinical psychologist. And so, I had to look around, work around how to word it, and then, kind of narrow it down And then in the end, I decided to go with trauma. And then in trauma also, when I work with clients, it's basically four things that I work with, because I believe there are four things that get affected in trauma. One is confidence, self-doubt. You start questioning yourself. You start questioning your competency. Am I good enough? Right? Second is, of course, your safety. You're not feeling safe, so am I safe enough? Emotional safety. The third one is, of course, worth. Am I worthy? Why am I here? Am I lovable? What is my purpose? Trying to find that purpose. What am I worthy of? What is my worth? And then the fourth one is trying to be in control. And what is that control? Is being control of our emotions, say anger. I used to have a lot of anger issues, or when you're going into those panic attacks, or when when you become a people pleaser and you're unable to set boundaries. So these are physical things, things that you need to do, or build a better communication, how to talk to my husband, what words to use, what sentences to use to be able to convey my message in a proper way without, being aggressive, or without being, hurting him, or without, in a way that he finds offensive, right? And then, or how to put a stop to a conversation, because sometimes our conversations would just spiral because we're talking about, say, we're talking about something, not being in its right place, say the kitchen is dirty or whatever. And now it spiraled into, it starts from there, and then it spirals into this, that, and this you did, and this, you, that. And now we're in the end arguing over something that was not even an issue, right? So how to stay there? Okay, so you're upset about this glass being on this table, so we should just focus on that. Okay, that's the issue. There's nothing else. Why are we talking about other things? So me being aware of all these things, and then being able to control it. Me being able to tell my husband, let's not talk about this.
Right. So I love the fact that you're identifying the four things.
Yeah.
And that you gradually got into the niche part. Who is your target audience?
So I work with trauma, PTSD, but of course, when people come to me, I talk about these four things, and that's where it comes out. They would say, yes, this is what so my target audience basically are people who are not feeling emotionally safe in some way. They're always threatened. And because they're not internally feeling safe, what they're doing is they see everybody around them as a threat. Okay. And then, of course, they're not trusting themselves. So they don't feel good enough. They don't feel that they can do well in life. Yes.
So are you looking, so I understand that your target audience are not safe, people who are threatened, but are these people coming to you from a clinical setting? A doctor is sending them to you, or are you finding these people like everybody else?
No, like everybody else. I have a Facebook group. So I do a Thursday therapy session, which is every once a month. So it's a free session. In fact, my upcoming one is on July 11th. It's going to be on my Facebook group. I do it on Zoom, and then it's broadcasted live on my Facebook group. And so there I have different topics I talk about. So, basically my statement that goes out is that I'm working with people dealing with fear, guilt, and resentment that holds them back, which is caused by a trauma that holds them back. So kind of it takes over everything. And so when I talk about these things, once they relate and they identify, yes, this is, they identify with the part, this is where I'm struggling. And then that's where then they reach out to me.
Right. So, okay. I'm sorry, running out of time quickly, but I don't want to continue this. I don't want to leave you hanging. So what advice, very quickly, do you have for people who are going through this and haven't found you yet?
Yeah, you can reach out to me. I can share my, a Calendly link. So I do a free catharsis session with people who want to reach out to me first time. I just listen to them. And my advice to people is that, you can heal. The healing journey can vary for different people. Some people heal quickly. Some people take a few months, some take years, and some may not even heal. You know, I even get people in their 70s and 80s still struggling with what happened when they were a child, right? Or how their parents treated them. And so how do you heal them? It's not that you're trying to eliminate them. It's just that you're trying to close those chapters, okay? Our life is a story. Anything and everything that happened to me is a story for you, right? Anything and everything that happened to, say, Anne Frank in the Holocaust, or what happens when there are school shootings, or when there are wars, or when there are gang rapes, or whatever bad things that are happening in the world, what are they for us? They're stories. We read them in the newspaper. We hear of them. We read books on them, right? They're somebody's real life stories, tragedies, but stories for us. So in the same way, if we start looking at our lives as stories, you know, and start learning from it, you know, and just watching our life like we're watching a television show, a series, right? And see ourselves, say, as Jennifer Aniston, and, you know, my husband as Tom Cruise, maybe, and, you know, and then start analyzing what's happening here, and what does Jennifer need to do, and what does Tom need to do. It starts making sense, right? And so our life is a story, and a lot of people connect with this, you know. Once you start seeing your life as a story, it's just a story.
What is your, how do people find you?
Normally through social media. I have a Calendly link. I have a website, healwithhina.com. It's very simple.
Say that again.
Heal with Hina, HEAL, with WITH, Hina, HIN, healwithhina.com. And then I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. You can find me anywhere. And if you would like, I can share my Calendly link here, and somebody wants to reach out to me, they can.
Oh, you can do that on Facebook group. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry that time is of an essence.
Yeah.
The thing is, everybody has trauma. Everybody has trauma. Somewhere along the line, along our lives, we've hurt, we've felt it. And maybe we're good enough. We can either ignore it, or we can forget about it and just say, you know what, it never happened, and we completely ignore it. Or we have to deal with it every single day. And sometimes we deal with it just our way. We don't know how and the proper way to do it. So sometimes it's better to find a therapist, a practitioner, an NLP practitioner who can help us overcome this trauma and pain and suffering that we self-inflict sometimes on ourselves. If you are one of those people, then you want to go look out and figure out if Hina is the right coach for you. You have her website, which is Heal with Hina, and go ahead and look her up, see what she's all about, figure it out. Don't stay with it. It can hurt you. It can hurt your family. It can hurt the people around you. Your work can be affected if you work out there. Anything public can affect you with the trauma. So don't.
And it can also come back later. So say something happened when you were 10 or 14 years old, and then you think you've healed because it's been 10, 15, 20 years. And then it will resurface. It can resurface later on in life. So sometimes, so don't assume that just because it never came up for 5, 10 years, that it will not come up. It may come up.
Right. So ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The last piece of advice that she shares with you. Go ahead and look her up. If you are one of those people who have suffered trauma, or you know anybody who can benefit from this, let's meet again. If you like what we're sharing with you, go ahead, share, like, and subscribe to our channel. And we'll meet again next week, ladies and gentlemen, with another guest, another segment of niche strategies and Munira's musings, because we are talking about niches and how you get to yours. She did it because she suffered it, and now she's an expert. You can too become an expert in your field. Just don't stand on the sidelines. I'll see you next week. Have a good week. Bye, everybody. Bye. Thanks, Hina.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Munira's Musings. We hope that you found today's conversation inspiring and useful so that you can continue making progress towards mastering your own niche. Please tune in next week for another episode, and in the meantime, you can follow us on social media at Munira's Musings on Facebook and leave us a review wherever you're listening to podcasts. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.